Here we go, episode 2 of Baloney and Applesauce.
Applesauce and Baloney. I'm Thor.
I'm Eric, broadcasting from a cabin in the woods. And we've got this is going to be, we're going to travel into the deep, dark, mysterious, and often confusing world of the DCEU. Which, now, does that include the television shows? Does that include the TV, or are we just talking movies here when we're talking DCEU?
It's, ultimately with DC, it's hard. I think DC, because of the crossover that they did, again, if you're just joining us, this show is usually, we try to keep it spoiler-free, but when we're discussing stuff like this, there's definitely spoilers. So if you've watched
I guess major spoilers for what we're talking Titans. We're talking.
We're going to talk Arrow. We're going to talk Flash.
Suicide Squad. That's the crux of it. Yeah, we have very differing opinions about the Suicide Squad movie, the latest one, the James Gunn one, versus the Ayers one.
Right.
So I think we were going to start there.
So DCEU, based on what they did in the Arrowverse with their multiverse, their I don't remember what DC calls it. Their many Earths. They brought
I think it's the Infinite Earths or I think it's Infinite Earths.
Infinite Earths. They brought Ezra Miller's Flash into the TV verse.
Right.
So as far as I'm concerned, what DC sees everything as connected in this Infinite Earths continuum. So
right, because season 5, that was what, season 5, 6 Flash was the Crisis. That's what we're referencing.
Yeah.
So at the end of the Crisis of Infinite Earths, they basically, they had Ezra Miller showed up, and then we got to see all these other, Green Lantern Planet. They set up Stargirl. It looked like they tied it to the
Doom
old
Patrol.
Green Lantern movie, Doom Patrol. So we got pretty excited.
They showed us Batman '88, which is now coming in the new Flash movie.
Right. So I don't think we're off base if we include it when we're talking about Titans. I think that could be the cinematic universe.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that could be when we're talking about that. But yeah, no. So I got you watching Titans about a month ago, and then you flew right ahead of me.
We're very, very late in the game with Titans. I admit I bought into the negative hype. I was told that it was bad. I was told that they took a way dark turn on it, and it wasn't good. So I bought it, and you watched it and said, "Hey, dude, you're being an idiot. Watch Titans." And it's amazing.
and it is. There is. I mean, and then this will lead into our Suicide Squad thing. I think we're about to talk about. But there is this and I love the Snyder cut. It made Justice League made much more sense. All the movies should have been two movies or 4 hours, so basically two movies. And we've talked about this. Aquaman, Batman versus Superman, Justice League. They all should have been 2 movies.
We have a whole separate 3-hour rant that we can go on the DCEU movies, but that doesn't exist here.
A lot of baloney.
Because we're building up to Suicide Squad. Now, so this is the James Gunn Suicide Squad. We're not talking about the David Ayers Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Reference that yet, because coming. But so James Gunn fired from Marvel. DC picks him up to make their reboot, retool. I don't know what you want to call it, but they redid.
I mean, it's a sequel. It's a sequel, but I mean, it's definitely so. So let's start with your unpopular
but it's not
opinion.
A sequel. But it's not a sequel because Captain Boomerang dies in both Suicide Squads.
Well, there's multiple Captain Boomerangs.
Right. So here we are on Infinite Earths again.
Right.
So here's where the problem lies.
Yeah, let's start with your unpopular opinion. What was your unpopular opinion?
Unpopular opinion, David Ayers' Suicide Squad is a better movie than James Gunn's Suicide Squad. I'm not saying that the David Ayers version that came out is a good movie. It definitely has a lot of problems, and we've talked about that before.
I know, and that's what's crazy is you're saying it's not a good movie, but it's better than James Gunn's Suicide Squad, which was amazing. No, okay. So yeah,
I just want to lay it out real quick. I just like because I
call baloney.
I know you're gonna rail me on this, but
I am.
I have watched it twice. Both times both times I was more invested in the Michael Rooker's character at the very beginning than I was with any of the rest of the characters. And heavy spoilers again, he dies immediately.
Okay, so let's start there. I loved it. The complete, jumping right into it, the movie, and just going, okay, look, we don't need to do a whole bunch of backstory. It's the Suicide Squad. You know what this is. And so they just put this, this team together, and and I'm excited for Michael Rooker. I'm like, oh man, he's going to be the salty old veteran. And they totally set up for that. And then they play against the expectation. And he just totally goes AWOL, and we get to see the button work. So we're setting up the stakes. We're setting up that this, and right away, James Gunn's telling you this isn't going to be the movie you think it is. I completely think he owns it. I disagree. I cared way more about every single character in this movie, whereas I couldn't even tell you, other than Harley Quinn and Deadshot. I couldn't even tell you the names or the characters. There was Killer Croc,
right.
And he was good. Then there was the possessed woman who was
the witch who was ultimately the main bad guy,
who was the big bad, right? And so I just felt like this one we got to see a lot more crazy heroes. TDK, Scene Stealer, Polka Dot Man.
See, I disagree on that, but
I mean, it's just like slapping the guns. I mean, I just love it. Was so weird. Okay, and so this is something I think that a lot of people are having problems with, because it's not, and his name was on it, but it's not a Snyderverse movie. And this goes back to our discussion about, all the negative stuff about Titans, because it's not exactly Snyder's verse. But see, okay, so to kind of step away from the Suicide Squad movie, but it's connected for a sec. The DC's made it. DC Warner Brothers have made their bed with that they're just going to do different properties. We're going to have the Joker. We're going to have Matt Reeves' Batman. We're going to have various people come in and do Suicide Squads or this or that as side projects. We're doing the Flash movie. So that's Flash movie is going to be like prime time. Like Marvel's doing sacred timeline stuff. But and I know we all want this continuity, but standalone, all by itself, I thought this Suicide Squad was its own. I didn't need to know the backstory and all the superheroes. I thought each character had their moment in the sun. And I was surprised by how much I liked it. And I didn't even care that it was...
And that's my problem, is I didn't feel like they made me care about any of the characters until the very end. Out of the main Suicide Squad that exists through the movie, obviously not the first Suicide Squad, not the first Suicide Squad, but the characters that go on through the majority of this movie, I didn't feel like they gave me a reason to connect with them. And in the end, the character I connected with most was the most ironic character, which was Polka Dot Man.
Dude, Polka Dot Man was
then,
amazing, and you're gonna have to.
If you've seen the movie, you know what happens with Polka Dot Man.
Well, okay, but so Polka Dot. Look, we have to talk about Polka Dot Man. You're gonna have to find the image of him. Did you see that he adopted a cat in Argentina?
Yes.
So you'll have to throw that picture up for people who haven't seen it. But it's like. Yeah, he was a main. There was no main characters. Each character, maybe Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn and Idris Elba and Bloodsport definitely are like main characters.
Bloodsport, Ratcatcher 2, Polka Dot Man, and Harley Quinn kind of almost had a solo movie during this movie.
Oh my God! Yeah, so let's talk about that for a sec, dude. The scene, like after she hooks up with the dictator guy,
right,
and.
Right.
Then he's monologuing. I knew it was coming, but I loved it. That made me want to go watch Birds of Prey, which I haven't previously had any interest in watching. I fell in love with what they did with Harley in this movie. She was great.
And that's the thing is I think for me so far in the movies, this is my favorite version of Harley. I would pay to go see a movie. I would pay to go see a Harley Quinn movie that's James Gunn's Harley Quinn.
100%.
I liked Birds of Prey, but they had to do too
much.
Well,
I'm definitely going to watch it. I probably should have watched it before we did this, but I've been trying to catch up on Titans.
I loved the first Harley Quinn in David Ayer's Suicide Squad. I thought he brought a really great twist to the character that's not the comic book character, that's not the cartoon character. This is by far my favorite Harley Quinn in the movies.
She was amazing.
But it's, and maybe that's part of my problem with it, is I didn't, as a movie, like it sat great as a comic book, and maybe that's the problem. He made a great comic book.
Yes, he made a comic book movie.
But I was bored.
And
honestly,
oh god,
the jokes were funny, but they just didn't land right with me. And
really,
I was sitting on my couch and I'd guffaw to myself and chuckle, but I expected to be outraged with comedy and laughing and amazed.
Well, and that's what I liked about it, and I think you represent a good portion of the fans who have a hard time when somebody does something outside of what's expected, because I felt exactly like you did multiple times in the movie where I was like, this is where did this come from? This is wild. Like the whole scene where they kill the entire camp that are actually good guys. It was off-putting, but in an almost Breaking Bad humor way. Like if anybody's familiar with that show, the humor is there, but it's punctuated with these really dark moments, like the moment between Captain Freedom, or what is he, Peacemaker, and Captain Flag. That broke my heart. I mean, as he's shoving it into his heart, it broke my heart. I was like, wow. In a short amount of time, I really kind of grew to care about these characters. And again, it was, the Suicide Squad franchise is not my most favorite. I think it would have been great had DC done it down the road, if they'd set a lot of these villains up in other movies, and we've talked about that before. So again, the Suicide Squad almost needed 2-3 other movies where these villains show up and we fall in love with these villains. And
that's part of my problem with this Suicide Squad, is I feel that David Ayer's Suicide Squad, for all the problems that it had, it set up who these people were. It showed Harley getting caught by Batman. It showed Captain Boomerang being caught by the Flash. It showed all the other characters, and it showed their backstory. It also, it gave a reason up front for why Will Smith's Deadshot was doing and acting the way he was. We had to wait a while for Idris Elba's character to give us that same motivation. Speaking of that, that's another problem I have with it, is I felt like I was watching the same characters played by different people with different names. Idris Elba was Deadshot. Peacemaker was Deadshot.
Peacemaker
we had King Shark, who was Killer Croc.
Or King Shark. I'll make a bunch of Gunn references.
Now, don't get me wrong. King Shark, by far, stand out of this whole movie. He
oh, Num Num. How could you not like him?
Sylvester Stallone, just like James Gunn did with Groot, best character of the whole movie.
Well, that's why I was going to say he's not Killer Croc. Killer Croc was boring. Killer Croc was, and so yes, but that you could make that argument about these being the same characters from this first Suicide Squad about most comic book characters. That's the whole concept of Deadpool, is that Deadpool is Deathstroke, is Deadshot, is Bloodsport, is all these guys. So, but see, my argument is okay, sure, they did it, but they did it way better than in the first Suicide Squad. And again, the first Suicide Squad had a lot of heavy lifting to do. They could do it. But, you hire James Gunn, you're going to get James Gunn. And this, so you and I, what you hate about it and I love about it is James Gunn. Each character had in Guardians of the Galaxy, each character had not a whole backstory set up why they were the way they were, but we had a moment where we got to know who they really were. Like he's really great at like one scene, we know who Rocket and Groot are. One scene dancing, we know who Star-Lord is. One scene with Gamora and Nebula, we get it. And then he gets into the story, and then you reveal that who they are by what they do. And so yeah, we do. Like Bloodsport doesn't want to care about anybody. He doesn't want to lead
you don't
anybody.
even know the difference between the two of them.
Well, exactly, but that it doesn't matter that they're basically the same comic book character, because that's what Marvel and DC are. There's a lot of recycled characters that are pretty much the same character. My argument is that this one, I loved King Shark. I loved him. I cared at the end when I thought he was getting eaten by his friends. Like I was genuinely concerned about him. I genuinely was sad when Polka Dot Man gets squished. I was genuinely sad when Captain Flag, and I didn't need the whole thing with Deadshot and his kid and Batman. I didn't need Harley Quinn is busted up over the Joker. Like, she was her. I think that's why we both like Harley Quinn in this one. This is really the one where it was like, she's Harley Quinn. Yeah. She's not tied to the Joker. I don't even think we heard his name.
Well, no, and this is the first movie that she shows up in where he has zero part of it. Even in Birds of Prey, we're still dealing with the aftermath of the Joker.
Right, she's getting strong because of the Joker, whereas this was just like she busted herself out of the place, like, which was so, and in a good way, such reminiscent of the first time we meet Black Widow. Yeah. So, yeah, they did a lot of good things, and I've said for a long time, please do what Marvel's doing, DC. Like, if you use the multiverse, use the infinite Earths, whatever you want to call it, but it's working, and I want the DC movies to succeed. But yeah, I mean, unless you have any more gripes about, I don't think we're ever going to agree on this. I think we could move to Titans.
And the thing is, we don't have to agree on it.
No.
I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm not saying you're a bad person if you like the Suicide Squad.
Well, I'm a bad person, but not because.
The only thing I'm saying is that for all the flaws that David Ayer's Suicide Squad has, and I've heard that there is a great David Ayer's cut of the Suicide Squad that's an incredible, gritty, and real movie that we'll probably never see.
Right.
But for all the problems it had, when my son puts that movie on, I'm like, oh, cool, we're watching the Suicide Squad. I'll come in half an hour once we're past Amanda Waller telling us who the Suicide Squad is for the third time.
Right.
But this movie just didn't connect with me. And that's why I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It just didn't hit home with me.
Well, and that's the great thing about movies and our love for them, and that's another thing. If you're actually listening to us, this is a conversation we've had a million times over the almost 30 years we've been friends, and that's that. You're not going to hear a lot of hate on our. We have criticisms, complaints, and wish lists for all of our favorite properties: Star Wars, Disney stuff, Marvel, DC. We love it all. But you're not going to hear a lot of hating on this channel because we always either agree to disagree, and that's what makes movies and comic books fun, is one person's treasure can be another person's trash, Right. But and so on sort of going from our our applesauce and on that, I just want to kind of talk like some baloney of like my wish list is, man, the more I'm watching Titans. Because I could see Titans existing in this universe with Suicide Squad. I can see Titans existing in the DC in the greater DCEU. So I don't see the big, and even Ayers. I believe all these things can be the same universe. And okay, so what was it? Deathstroke? Yeah, Deathstroke in the Titans show is obviously different than Joe Manganiello, who plays Deathstroke in the Snyderverse. Or right. or in the movies. I'm going to try to move away from the Snyderverse thing, even though that's what everybody talks about. But I just have such a wish that they show Bruce Wayne, they show Batman, they talk about these other characters. They talk about how the Titans are going to have to handle this because Batman and Alfred are halfway across the world with the Justice League. And I know it doesn't exactly time out, but I want I want these to exist in the same continuum.
Right. So that leads us into Titans, where we do see Batman. We do hear talk of the Justice League, and we're getting an amazing story with Robin, now Nightwing, and all the Titans that we're used to, minus Cyborg because he was in the Justice League movie. Again, somewhat segregated from the other properties because of what they did on Crisis and Infinite Earths. The Titans now live in a different Earth with the Doom Patrol, which is another brilliant show. Mm-hmm. And the TV shows exist on another Earth, and the movies exist on another Earth, and other older TV shows exist on their own Earths. But what we didn't get with the Arrow and the Flash, where they couldn't say Batman, they could say Gotham, they could say the Bat, they could say vigilantes, but we never got a Batman. We didn't even get Batman in the Batwoman show.
Right.
We got them talking about him, but Titans gave us. It's a bridge world between the movies and the TV shows, and maybe that's
so I got to tell you.
I
got to tell you because I'm rapidly trying to catch up on Titans to get into season 3 here. So, but I got to tell you. So, did you think? And I love him. I love the choice. The guy who was the Khaleesi's second-hand man in
oh yeah. I don't know his name. The guy that plays
and I love
Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, I love that actor. I thought it was Alfred. But then I really liked. I thought it was Alfred. I was like, oh, cool, they got that guy to play Alfred, and he's like, oh, Bruce, and I'm like, oh, okay, so weird. I wanted to talk real quick about that choice, like because at first it kind of like you, where it wasn't what I expected if they were going to actually show me. First of all, I was blown away. I'm like, wow, we're seeing Bruce Wayne. We're gonna sit down and have that moment where we actually get to see Bruce Wayne with the Titans and stuff and. But yeah, first it threw me, but then I really liked the choice of them going with it. He's an older Batman. This is definitely
we're definitely in a Dark Knight Batman. This is Batman at the end of his game. This is older Batman, who's having a harder time fighting crime. Who's
because that's an older choice than Ben Affleck. If you're choosing Ben Affleck for the cinematic old Batman, I mean. And granted, I think Ben Affleck's 49, which blows me away that he's 49. But I guess
right.
We're getting there too,
right?
But I mean, to make that choice because that guy's got to be at least 5-10 years older than Ben Affleck. So to make that choice, I thought was pretty brave and telling about where they're going to go with the storyline in Titans.
Yeah, and again, it's great because we get Bruce Wayne. We get to see Batman. Robin gets to fight with Batman. Granted, it's not quite the way that we expected. It's not quite the way that the
but they showed it. They got to show Robin taking
Batman
on the Batcave.
And now
they went after the Batcave.
And does Titans need to have Batman to be a good show? No, it doesn't. Titans is existing on its own. It's a great property on its own.
But to not mention
it's just a great seasoning that makes the show that much better.
Well, and it's distracting, and this kind of winds us back into Arrow and the old CW shows. Is if Berlanti had this freedom, Greg Berlanti, the guy who basically one of the two creators of basically the CW Arrow, Flash, Legends, Supergirl. That whole, and then on and on. I mean, Black Lightning. I mean, he's sort of the mastermind about bringing DC, to TV. But if he'd been able to do that, to just reference, there's Batman over in Gotham, or when they bring these other characters that are definitely Batman characters.
Yeah,
because it was distracting.
Because we get an Arrow, and he's dealing with these as the Arrow show went on. He dealt with less street-level crime and started dealing with aliens and weird things. And it's like, well, obviously there's a Batman and a Superman somewhere in this world because you've set up a DC world. So, where's that connection? You know,
See, and I always liked to imagine that it sort of felt like until the later seasons of all of them when they did Infinite Crisis and then they had a Superman and they had all this. But it was weird that they were able to do Superman but not Batman. But I always in my mind sort of pretended this is an alternate Earth where
it is.
Batman comes on a way later than Arrow and the Flash and Batman's
or not at all because they didn't have a Superman and Supergirl. You know,
they do hint. I believe there are points in Arrow where they talk about this vigilante in Gotham.
They talk about a vigilante, correct? But the show as it was before the crisis happened was a split show. Supergirl was its own thing, so Superman and Supergirl didn't exist in the continuity. They had their own TV show. They were on a different network.
Right.
You know, and that's probably where a lot of the problem came in is just like Marvel and Sony, there's properties that are owned by different companies, and it gets really messy when you want to start using certain things certain ways. But
right,
my hope when they did in the Crisis on Infinite Earths is that they'd tie all those things together, and you know, all cards out on the table. I haven't watched the new Superman and Lois show yet. I've heard it's great.
Well, and I've been meaning to watch Stargirl too. I want to give Stargirl.
Stargirl was really good. I watched the first couple episodes of Stargirl. I need to catch back up on it.
But see, DC is they're so close, and I think that's kind of what we're talking about. Is DC, Warner Brothers, DCU, Snyderverse, whatever you want to call it. I feel like they're right on the precipice of really pulling it together, and it's been stop start. It hasn't been a relatively smooth progression like Marvel did, but they're getting there, and they're starting to bring me back in because I've always said I'm not one of these Marvel versus DC people. I love, Batman, Superman as much as I love, the Hulk and Spider-Man, Iron Man, all those guys. So I want them to succeed, and I really, and you and I've talked about this before, and maybe this is where we wrap up. We can, kind of start wrapping up. Is Flashpoint? It's all about Flashpoint. The where they can really bring this together and set up. Okay, yeah, there's this. Joaquin Phoenix Joker, and that exists over here. And there's Matt Reeves Batman, and then there's the Batman Flash 81, and all these things they can exist, and maybe they can even do crossovers. But you can because I do want I wouldn't mind a lighter DC show. One of my problems with the Snyder thing is it was always too dark.
I want to see a movie with the Superman that we got at the end of Shazam.
Yes.
I want that Superman. I want the Superman from the post-credit scene of the theatrical release of Justice League. I want that Superman.
Yeah.
I want my Superman.
But see, now that we've seen now that we saw
the
Snyder cut, I'm not bothered by the whole Zack Snyder. I get what Zack Snyder was finally doing. My biggest complaint against those movies was I was like, these are too dark. These are too dark. But now it's obvious he'd always intended to set up this dark verse, this DC Dark universe, but then have the Flash be able to go back and hence that scene in Justice League where he's like, oh, I'm too early, or I'm too late, or I'm at the wrong time, and then actually putting in the time travel thing at the end of his cut of Justice League. I'm like, oh, I get what you're doing. Yeah. Like, I love this. Yeah. Too bad it's not happening. Maybe.
Yeah. There's so much that and I wasn't a big buy-in on the Snyder stuff. I enjoy it.
It's Batman, Superman, and there are great parts of those movies.
But after seeing the Snyder cut of Justice League, I want more of that.
Me too.
And I'd love, just like the other properties that get started and usually suffer an early fate. I want to see where it's going. I want to see the stories end up. I want to know.
That's not just you and me. Yeah, it's not just you and me. I've heard from multiple people that if Aquaman had been 2 movies, that just too much is too much. That could have been 2 movies. The whole underwater Atlantean political thing. Batman, Superman should have been, and they were supposed to. And so it's like they were just rushing to get stuff out. It felt like, and they hamstringed themselves. But I think if they have an opportunity, like DC, Warner Brothers, if you're listening, if you even care about our little applesauce and bologna sandwich we're trying to put together here, please. Flashpoint it's your rewrite. It's exactly what Marvel's getting ready to do. Well, not a rewrite, but it's setting up that, okay, if we have to reboot this or that, or we bring in Captain Marvel, we've got the Quantumania, we've got Multiverse of Madness. DC has the same tools.
You've hit a multiverse. DC now has the chance with Flashpoint. And, of course, we don't know what's going to happen in the Flash movie. But I can hope that they take this moment to recorrect the course.
Well, and use what Marvel's
steer away
done.
from the iceberg.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, exactly. Go back in time, have Flash go back to the Titanic and be like, look out!
Yeah. So, but that's neither here nor there. We don't have control over that. All we can hope is that as fans shouting out into the
into
void,
the sphere,
that someone somewhere is listening and can. I'm not asking DC to make Marvel movies. I'm not doing that. I'm just asking them to pick a direction and run with it.
Right, but they are comic book movies, and I think it's fair to say, like, hey, DC, use what Marvel did. They've done all the heavy lifting, educating audiences about the concept of multiverse and the concept of this and that. And DC and Marvel have always been intertwined like this. They've always, Marvel had the Infinity Crisis. DC had the Crisis of Infinite Earths. They've both companies have done this before. So I don't think anyone can claim ownership of these concepts. And so I say use it. Use it and pick your own direction and go there.
Right. And I mean there's a lot coming up. We have the Flash is I think either in reshoots or had finished reshoots and is in edit. We have Shazam that was just in production. We have Aquaman that's in production. So there's a lot coming down the road that's going to be really interesting to see where DC goes.
Yep, and I hope we get another Wonder Woman because that's another conversation. But where you were disappointed in James Gunn's Suicide Squad, I was pretty disappointed in Wonder Woman. But I'm gonna give it another shot. But I just man, I was so excited for Wonder Woman 84.
Oh, it's again it's just like David Ayer's Suicide Squad. It's problematic at points. Wink, wink. But I mean, we here in our house, we did enjoy Wonder Woman 84 for what it was. Was it the other Wonder Woman? No, it wasn't. But it was a good movie. I did enjoy it, minus the weird Steve stuff.
The weird Steve stuff. Well, no, and again, I think it comes down to, I think, what I was criticizing you for doing, which was, I think it just wasn't what I expected or what I wanted. And that shouldn't be a reason. I think if you don't like something, that's fine. But if it's just not what you want or expect, I think that's very refreshing. And I think that's where, when James Gunn came out of nowhere and did the first Guardians, and, Taika Waititi did such a good job with Ragnarok, it was because they were given the chance to do something we didn't expect.
Right. And that's a conversation that we've had about a lot of things, mainly Star Wars.
Yes, mainly Star Wars. But that is for another episode.
Right. But no, I agree with you. It's going to see movies and managing your expectations for what you want and what the IP is giving you are two separate things. And you have to be able to go into things and enjoy it for what it is.
And trust me, nobody loves fan service more than me, but it's got to be thoughtful fan service, and I like it when it's a little more innovative and subtle than just like, here, we're going to give you what you want, because I think that's one of the, you could say a criticism about the Star Wars sequel movies is especially Force Awakens, a little heavy on the fan service without really having anything, behind it.
Right.
But I still enjoyed it.
But again, Star Wars, that's a different story for a different time.
Yeah, I think, So we'll be talking about that.
That's what's going on as far as we know in DC today. This was kind of a DC heavy episode, so we kept it kind of tied together. But definitely more to come. There's some Star Wars stuff that's going on. There's a bunch of new Marvel stuff that's going on.
Yeah, and if you are into DC, we're definitely, like I said, we're gonna get. We were big fans of the CW shows. Talked about that a lot. I'm gonna get caught up on Stargirl, Titans. So yeah, there will be Doom Patrol. There's going to be
there's a third season of Doom Patrol coming too.
Awesome, awesome. Good to know. Good to know.
With the incomparable Brendan Fraser.
Yes, the inimitable, the national treasure, Brendan Fraser. But yeah, I guess check us out on Facebook. You're going to do all that here? Wrap us up?
Yeah. Go ahead. Like us on Facebook. We're going to drop the video there. Like and follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the little bell so you can get notifications when we get around to posting these. We're going to try to get it on a regular schedule, but since we are just starting, we're kind of just going to give you all the applesauce and baloney all at once.
Tell a friend. Tell us what you think. Let us know what you're into, what you think about what they're doing over at Warner Brothers in DC. And tell us how we're doing. If it's good, bad, constructive, destructive, please stop. Just let us know.
I think my wife's going to leave that one. Please stop. I want you back cleaning the house.
Well, yeah, but now your wife and my girlfriend will know what we talk about. 3 times a week on the phone.
Right. Right.
Now
how did you talk to Eric for 2 hours yesterday for every day of the week? It's like, well. Yeah. Well, we watched Titans, and then we had to talk about Titans, and then we watched the Star Wars trailer, and we had to talk about Star Wars, and then we watched Doom Patrol and had to talk about that, and we watched Turner and Hooch, and then had to talk about Turner and Hooch.
Really, this podcast is just proof to our significant others that we're not having a secret love affair. I mean, we are, but it's just about nerd stuff.
That's a different channel.
All right, man. Well, I'll see you next time.
All right,
Baloney signing off.